Namaskar, world, and welcome to the Medical School Podcast. The class is in session. When we think of summer, our minds often drift to those truly idyllic images, don't they? We picture sparkling swimming pools shimmering under a bright, benevolent sun. We anticipate long-awaited holidays, perhaps a cool, refreshing drink in hand, the air buzzing with the promise of carefree days. That's the classic promise of summer, the dream sort of etched into our collective consciousness. But lately, for so many of us across the globe, that bright, once friendly sun has felt like it's, well, turned against us, transforming from a source of joy into something far more menacing. We're seeing temperatures suddenly soaring, often well over 30 degrees Celsius, in places you'd traditionally never expect to experience such extremes. I'm talking about regions like the United Kingdom, which in June 2025 recorded temperatures that were simply unheard of for that time of year. Cities are quite literally shimmering with heat, the asphalt visibly rippling, and tragically, our hospitals are starting to flood, not with typical summer ailments, but with patients suffering from severe heat-related illnesses. This isn't just a fleeting discomfort or an unusually warm spell. It's a profound global challenge that demands our immediate attention and understanding. Today, we're going to embark on a vital exploration into what are increasingly and chillingly being referred to as silent killers, heat waves. Our mission for the session, for you, our dedicated listeners, is to truly understand the multifaceted nature of heat waves, what they are, why they're intensifying across the entire globe at such an alarming rate, and perhaps most importantly, how all of us, from individuals making daily choices to the dedicated health professionals on the front lines, to entire public health systems can respond effectively and build resilience against these growing threats. It's about empowering you with knowledge that can genuinely save lives and safeguard communities.
And the urgency of this topic simply cannot be overstated. What you've just described, the immediate and very palpable impact is being felt right now in communities and cities across the world. From the uh, uncharacteristic heat in London to the blistering conditions in New Delhi, this isn't some distant, abstract climate projection. It's a lived reality, a tangible threat that impacts millions daily. Understanding this phenomenon isn't just about abstract climate science or, meteorological data. It's absolutely critical for our personal well-being, for the collective health of our public, and for the stability of our societies. It's about being prepared, being informed, and ultimately making choices that save lives as these extreme conditions become, well, the new normal. We simply cannot afford to ignore this.
That immediately underscores the urgency, doesn't it? It sounds like this isn't just a future problem, but something we're grappling with right now, shaping our summers and challenging our resilience. So let's start with the very foundation of our understanding, because when we talk about heat, it can encompass such a broad spectrum of experiences. What exactly is a heat wave? Is it merely any hot day? Or is there a specific, almost clinical definition we should be aware of, something that differentiates it from just a really warm spell?
That's a crucial distinction, and it's excellent to begin there. A heat wave is far more than just a particularly hot day, or even, a string of hot days that feel uncomfortable. By precise definition, it's a prolonged period of abnormally high temperatures, lasting for several consecutive days, typically 3 or more. And critically, these temperatures are significantly above the regional norms for that specific time of year.
Ah, okay, so significantly above and prolonged.
Exactly. It's about sustained, unusual heat that pushes environmental and physiological limits, rather than just a single peak temperature that might occur. The deviation from the expected and the persistence of that deviation is key. To give you some concrete examples, what constitutes a heat wave is often tailored to specific regions, reflecting what constitutes abnormal for a particular climate and what local infrastructure and populations are accustomed to handling.
Right.
For instance, in the United Kingdom, a country not traditionally associated with scorching summers, a heat wave is typically declared when temperatures reach or exceed 28 degrees Celsius for 3 consecutive days in London or 25 degrees Celsius in other parts of the country.
Okay, so even within the UK, there's a difference. Why London higher?
That differentiation isn't arbitrary. It reflects the fact that London, as a dense urban environment with a significant heat island effect, retains and amplifies heat differently than more rural or suburban areas. More concrete, less green space.
Yeah, urban heat island. Makes sense.
And we saw this put into stark reality in June 2025, when parts of eastern England were experiencing highs of 34 degrees Celsius.
34. Wow.
Now think about that for a moment. 34 degrees in England is approximately 12 degrees Celsius higher than what would be considered the seasonal norm for that region at that time.
12 degrees higher. That's That's huge.
It really is. To put
Yeah.
that into perspective for someone unaccustomed to it, that's like stepping into a different climate zone entirely, with the immediate sensation of oppressive, stifling air. That significant and sustained deviation is precisely what triggers severe heat health alerts, like the amber ones that were issued then by the UK Health Security Agency, or UKHSA, and the Met Office, which is the UK's National Weather Service.
And those alerts aren't just advisory, right? They trigger action.
Absolutely. These alerts aren't just for public information. They prompt a cascading series of actions across emergency services and healthcare. Of course, it's not just the UK facing these challenges. Across the United States, we've recently seen heat indices.
Ah, the feels like temperature.
Exactly. Which combine both actual air temperature and humidity to reflect how hot it feels to the human body, soaring toward a sweltering 40 degrees Celsius across large swaths of the Midwest and East Coast. For instance, in a humid environment, 32 degrees C can feel like 40 degrees C because the high humidity prevents sweat from evaporating off your skin, which is your body's primary cooling mechanism.
So your body just can't cool down effectively.
Precisely. Your
Yeah.
body can't cool itself as efficiently, making the risk of heat-related illness dramatically higher. We saw this in cities like Chicago and New York, where these feels-like temperatures pushed urban dwellers to their limits. And then you look at South Asia, where the situation can be even more extreme and prolonged. In India and Pakistan, during April to June of 2025, there were blistering temperatures reaching an astounding 49 degrees Celsius in Balochistan and exceeding 46 degrees Celsius in New Delhi.
49 degrees, it's hard to even comprehend that level of heat.
For context, the human body struggles to maintain core temperature when ambient air temperature exceeds skin temperature, especially in combination with high humidity. At 46-49 degrees Celsius, the body is fighting a constant battle, and even simple outdoor activity can become life-threatening. These aren't just hot days. These are periods of intense, sustained, and regionally abnormal heat that have profound and devastating consequences for human health and daily life.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this a bit more because it's clearly far more than just like a warm spell, isn't it? It's a sustained, extreme event with very specific and importantly, regionally adapted criteria. What's truly fascinating here is how these definitions vary so much by region. It really shows us that it's all relative to the local climate and what the human body and local infrastructure are accustomed to handling. It's not just about a high number on the thermometer then, it's about a deviation from the expected, and that deviation persisting. Could you expand on why that adaptability in defining a heat wave is so crucial for policy and public safety? Because what's normal in Rajasthan isn't normal in Manchester, right?
Precisely. That adaptability in defining a heat wave is absolutely crucial because it directly informs public health responses. If a region rarely experiences temperatures above, say, 25 degrees C, their infrastructure, their buildings, their public spaces, their healthcare systems are simply not designed to cope with prolonged periods above that.
They're just not built for it.
Exactly. Their populations aren't acclimatized, meaning their bodies haven't adapted physiologically to hotter conditions, and they may lack basic coping mechanisms like air conditioning or even knowledge of heat safety. So, a lower threshold for a heat wave alert in such a region ensures that warnings are issued before widespread harm occurs. Conversely, in a region like parts of India where high temperatures are a summer reality, the heat wave threshold is much higher. However, even there, what's critical is the deviation from their own normal and the persistence of the heat.
Right, the sustained nature again.
A few days at 40 degrees C might be manageable, but weeks at 45 degrees C, as we've seen, are catastrophic because the body and infrastructure never get a chance to recover or cool down overnight. So these localized definitions are not just scientific curiosities. They are deeply practical tools that allow governments and health agencies to activate specific emergency plans tailored to the unique vulnerabilities and capacities of their populations. It's about protecting people based on their environment, not some global average.
That makes a perfect sense. It's about a finely tuned understanding of local resilience. This brings us squarely to the next logical and, frankly, sobering question. Why are these extreme events, these meticulously defined heat waves, becoming so much more frequent, more intense, and extending into new regions globally? What's the driving force behind this alarming trend?
This is where the dots connect directly and undeniably to global warming. The fundamental science is clear. Our Earth is warming due to the accumulation of greenhouse gases from human activities like burning fossil fuels.
The greenhouse effect, right.
Precisely. And even what might seem like a small rise in global average temperature, say, a 1 to 2 degrees Celsius increase, doesn't just mean slightly warmer days across the board. It directly translates to a much higher frequency and severity of these extreme heat events, these heat waves, across the planet. Think of it like this. If you shift the entire distribution curve of temperatures just a little bit to the right, what were once rare extreme hot days become common, and what were once merely hot days become dangerously extreme.
So the extremes become more common and new, even higher extremes become possible.
Exactly. The energy trapped by greenhouse gases amplifies the baseline temperature, making what would have been a warm day into a hot one, and a hot day into a dangerously extreme, often deadly one. We're seeing direct, unequivocal attribution of these events to human activity. For example, the June 2025 heat event that impacted the UK was meticulously analyzed by leading climate scientists. They concluded, through sophisticated modeling in comparison with pre-industrial climate data, that this specific heat wave was 100 times more likely to occur because of human-caused climate change.
100 times more likely. That's staggering.
That's not just a small statistical blip. That's a staggering statistical increase, demonstrating the clear and undeniable fingerprint of our actions on these weather phenomena. It means this wasn't a natural anomaly. It was a consequence of our altered atmosphere. And it's not just about the intensity, it's also about the timing and duration. In South Asia, what were once rare early-season heat waves are now becoming a disturbing, regular feature, sometimes even overlapping with monsoon season, exacerbating humidity.
Early season, so catching people unprepared.
Exactly. The one in mid-April 2025, which affected northern India and Pakistan, is a prime example. This type of early-season extreme heat puts immense strain on agricultural cycles, impacting crop yields and water availability even before the peak summer months. It also catches populations off guard, leading to higher mortality as people aren't yet prepared with cooling strategies or access to cool shelters. This extension of the heatwave season is largely, if not entirely, attributed to the broader patterns of global warming.
It really changes the rhythm of the seasons.
It does. We've also seen global record-shattering events that underscore this accelerating trend. In Japan, during the summer of 2024, temperatures soared over 41 degrees Celsius across numerous prefectures. This wasn't just a discomfort. It led to thousands of hospitalizations for heat stroke and, tragically, over 120 deaths.
Thousands hospitalized just from heat.
Think about the strain on our healthcare system. Emergency rooms overflowing, staff working beyond capacity, resources stretched thin. It's a national health crisis in slow motion. On the other side of the world, in Western Australia, late March 2024 saw the region endure 5 consecutive days above 35 degrees Celsius. For a region known for its heat, this prolonged intensity meant that even established cooling strategies began to fail, with significant impacts on outdoor workers and infrastructure.
So even places used to heat are struggling with this new intensity and duration.
That's right. And then across Southeast Asia, April 2024 brought its own staggering figures, with the Philippines recording heat indices as high as 53 degrees Celsius.
53. Feels like that's almost unimaginable.
That's what it felt like. A truly dangerous, life-threatening level of heat combined with oppressive humidity. At such levels, even basic activities become perilous. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a consistent, escalating global pattern driven by our warming climate, signaling a profound shift in global weather dynamics.
Here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a bit sobering. It's not just that it's getting hotter. These extreme events are becoming statistically far, far more probable because of our change in climate. When you say 100 times more likely, that's not just a small shift. That's a fundamental, alarming alteration of our atmospheric conditions. It challenges our very understanding of what normal weather even means anymore. This raises an incredibly important and quite personal question for all of us. What does this intensifying, more frequent, and spatially spreading heat mean for our bodies and our health? How does this impact us physiologically when our planet's thermostat is turning up so dramatically?
That's the critical pivot. Because while the statistics on temperature rise are stark, the human impact is even more so. High heat places immense, immediate stress on the human body, pushing our finely tuned physiological systems to their limits. At its core, it taxes the heart significantly. As your body tries to cool itself, blood is diverted to the skin to release heat, forcing the heart to pump harder and faster to circulate this increased volume.
So the heart's working overtime.
Exactly. This can be especially dangerous for individuals with pre-existing cardiovascular conditions, making them highly susceptible to heart attacks or strokes during heat waves. Simultaneously, intense heat causes rapid and significant dehydration as our bodies try to cool themselves through sweating. We lose not just water, but vital electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium.
Ah, the electrolytes.
Yes, these minerals are essential for nerve function, muscle contraction, and maintaining fluid balance. When they are depleted, it can lead to muscle cramps, dizziness, and even seizures. And if the body's natural cooling mechanisms are overwhelmed, if sweat can't evaporate effectively, like in high humidity, or if fluid intake isn't sufficient, core body temperature begins to rise dangerously, rapidly increasing the risk of heat stroke, which is a severe, life-threatening medical emergency.
Okay, so there's a spectrum of problems heat can cause.
Yes, we see a clear spectrum of heat-related illnesses. On the milder, yet still concerning end, there's heat exhaustion. This condition presents with symptoms like general weakness, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, and profuse sweating.
That sounds unpleasant, but maybe manageable.
It's uncomfortable, a clear warning sign that your body is struggling, but generally manageable with prompt intervention, moving to a cooler environment, rehydrating, and resting. However, if heat exhaustion isn't addressed, or if the exposure to extreme heat continues, it can quickly escalate to heat stroke.
And heat stroke is the really dangerous one.
Heat stroke is a medical emergency that requires immediate intervention. Its key warning signs are distinct and urgent. Confusion or altered mental state, which can manifest as disorientation, irritability, or even loss of consciousness. Crucially, in classic heat stroke, there's often the cessation of sweating, meaning the skin might feel hot and dry rather than clammy, as the body's cooling system has completely failed. A rapid, strong pulse and rapid, shallow breathing are also common.
Dry skin. That's a key differentiator from heat exhaustion, then.
It often is, yes. When you see these signs, confusion, dry, hot skin, rapid pull, it's an immediate life-or-death emergency. The impact of these physiological strains on healthcare systems during heat events is immediate and substantial. Emergency visits to hospitals jump significantly. We're talking about an increase of approximately 15% across the board during heat waves, sometimes even higher in particularly vulnerable urban areas.
15% increase, that's a huge extra load on ERs.
It puts immense pressure on emergency rooms, staff, and resources, diverting attention and personnel from other urgent medical needs, creating a domino effect across the entire healthcare infrastructure. It means longer wait times, stretched staff, and reduced capacity for non-heat-related emergencies. And when we talk about mortality figures, the reality is stark and truly tragic, highlighting heat as a truly silent killer. In England and Wales, during the forecast period of June 19th to 22nd, 2025, an estimated 570 to 600 excess deaths occurred.
Excess deaths, meaning deaths directly because of the heat that wouldn't have otherwise happened.
Exactly. These are deaths above what would normally be expected for that time of year, directly attributable to the heat.
And what's particularly heartbreaking is that a shocking 85% of these deaths occurred among people over 65 years old.
85%, that's staggering. It really highlights the vulnerability of older adults.
It absolutely does. This highlights the acute vulnerability of our elderly population, who may have underlying health conditions, take medications that impair thermoregulation, or be socially isolated. Many of these deaths are not directly from heat stroke, but from exacerbated cardiovascular events, respiratory crises, or kidney failure brought on by the extreme heat stress.
So it pushes existing conditions over the edge.
Precisely. But if we expand our view to a global context, the numbers are even more profound. Globally, extreme heat is responsible for approximately 500,000 deaths annually.
500,000 deaths annually.
Yes. To put that into perspective, this figure profoundly impacts our understanding of natural disasters. This number actually exceeds the combined mortality from more dramatic, often televised natural disasters like earthquakes or hurricanes on a yearly basis.
More than earthquakes and hurricanes combined. That's hard to believe almost.
It truly underscores why we refer to heat waves as silent killers. They often don't leave the visible devastation of a hurricane, but their human toll is significantly higher and often goes unnoticed in daily news cycles.
So, what does this all mean for us? That's a truly sobering statistic. Because when we think of natural disasters, our minds usually jump to immediate, dramatic events, the hurricanes, the floods, the earthquakes. What does it mean, then, that this silent killer of heat waves is statistically more lethal than the combined mortality from those other, more visible disasters? What misconceptions does this challenge about where we should focus our disaster preparedness, and why do you think this profound impact often flies under the radar?
That's an excellent and crucial question, and it fundamentally challenges our perception of what constitutes a major disaster. The reason heat deaths often fly under the radar is multifaceted. Firstly, they tend to be less dramatic. There's no immediate, visible collapse of infrastructure like after an earthquake.
Right, no dramatic footage usually.
Exactly. The deaths are often more gradual, insidious, and sometimes attributed to natural causes that are only accelerated by heat. An elderly person might have a heart attack, and while the heat was the precipitating factor, it's not always explicitly listed as the cause of death in the way a hurricane fatality would be. Secondly, heat deaths disproportionately affect vulnerable populations: the elderly, the very young, the chronically ill, outdoor workers, and the socioeconomically disadvantaged. These are often groups whose struggles receive less public attention.
Less visible groups, perhaps.
Often, yes. This quiet, persistent attrition of life contrasts sharply with the dramatic, visible destruction of other disasters. What it should mean for our disaster preparedness is a radical shift in focus. We invest billions in hurricane defenses, earthquake-resistant buildings, and flood barriers, and rightly so. But the data unequivocally tells us that heat waves demand an equally, if not more, significant investment in public health infrastructure, early warning systems, and community resilience.
So a rebalancing of priorities, almost.
It suggests that yes, it means moving from a reactive model focused on immediate dramatic events to a proactive, preventative model that anticipates and mitigates the slow burn yet equally deadly crisis of extreme heat. It forces us to understand that disaster preparedness isn't just about surviving a storm. It's about building livable, healthy environments in a warming world. And, these widespread health impacts aren't just individual tragedies. They create a ripple effect across entire systems and societies.
Absolutely. What's truly fascinating here is how interconnected everything is. A heat wave isn't just a weather event that happens in isolation. It's a systemic stressor that pulls on multiple threads of our societal fabric, from our most vulnerable individuals to our core infrastructure, our food supply, and even the very air we breathe. It's a complex domino effect. Could you elaborate on some of those ripple effects, the systemic strains that high heat places on broader society?
You've hit on a critical point. The ripple effect is profound and far-reaching. Think about infrastructure, for instance. Power grids are incredibly vulnerable to overheating. When demand for air conditioning surges during a heat wave, the grid itself, with its transformers and transmission lines, is simultaneously under immense thermal stress. This can lead to widespread blackouts, as equipment fails or systems are deliberately shut down to prevent catastrophic overloads.
Right, the grid gets overloaded and overheated at the same time.
Exactly. We saw this in California during a 2020 heat wave, leading to rolling blackouts affecting millions. These blackouts, in turn, further compound heat risks, especially for those without alternative cooling like generators, turning homes into dangerously hot traps. Simultaneously, water supplies often drop significantly due to increased evaporation from reservoirs and rivers, coupled with a surge in consumption for drinking, bathing, and even industrial cooling.
So water shortages become a real issue too.
Definitely. This creates shortages that impact everything from agriculture to basic sanitation in urban areas, leading to water rationing and increased risk of waterborne diseases. Economically, the impact is severe. Farms and livestock suffer profoundly. Crops can wilt and die in the fields, leading to significant yield losses and threatening food security.
Food prices could go up?
Potentially, yes. Animals, particularly poultry and cattle, can succumb to heat stress, affecting milk production, meat quality, and leading to mass fatalities in extreme cases. In 2022, a heat wave in Kansas killed thousands of cattle, costing ranchers millions. This isn't just about large-scale farming. It hits individual livelihoods directly, impacting rural economies and potentially driving up food prices for everyone.
And the environment itself must suffer.
Environmentally, the consequences are equally dire. Forests and grasslands become incredibly dry and volatile, acting like tinderboxes. This makes them far more prone to burning, leading to a dramatic increase in destructive wildfires.
The wildfire risk goes way up.
Dramatically. These fires devastate natural habitats, destroy homes, displace communities, and release massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, further accelerating global warming in a vicious cycle. We've seen this cycle play out repeatedly in places like Australia, the Amazon, and the American West. And then there's air quality. High heat isn't just uncomfortable, it acts as a catalyst for chemical reactions in the atmosphere. Ozone pollutants, for instance, which are harmful at ground level, form more readily in high temperatures and sunlight.
So the air actually gets worse to breathe.
Significantly. This deteriorates air quality, which compounds existing respiratory problems for the population, particularly for individuals with asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, or other lung conditions. What might be a hot day for one person can become a serious, life-threatening respiratory hazard for another. These effects are not confined to specific areas. They're widespread, straining cities, rural areas, and everything in between, creating a complex web of interconnected challenges that demand holistic solutions.
It's truly eye-opening how a single weather phenomenon can trigger such a cascade of interconnected problems across so many sectors. It highlights that tackling heat waves requires a far more integrated approach than we might initially assume. So, knowing this, knowing the precise definition, the undeniable link to global warming, and the widespread, profound impact on human health and societal systems, what can we do right now to protect ourselves and others in our communities? What are the immediate practical steps that you would advise every single one of our listeners to take when temperatures start to rise dramatically?
Practical, actionable advice is absolutely paramount for individual resilience and community safety during a heat wave. First and foremost, hydration is key, and I cannot stress this enough. This isn't just about drinking water when you feel thirsty. It's about sipping water often throughout the day, even if you don't feel a strong urge. Your body's cooling mechanism relies on it.
Keep sipping, don't wait till you're parched.
Exactly. And crucially, you must avoid consuming liquor and caffeine. Both are diuretics, meaning they increase urine production and will actively dehydrate your body further, counteracting all your efforts to stay hydrated and potentially accelerating the onset of heat-related illness.
Okay, so skip the coffee and the beer. Stick to water.
Stick to plain water, or if you're sweating profusely, electrolyte-rich drinks like sports drinks or rehydration solutions can be helpful. Next, focus intently on cooling your immediate environment. Inside your home, during the hottest parts of the day, typically 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., close blinds, curtains, and even external shutters, especially on south and west-facing windows, to block out direct sunlight.
Keep the sun out, basically.
Prevent your home from becoming a heat trap. Use fans to circulate air, but remember, as we'll discuss later, fans have limitations above certain temperatures. If you have air conditioning, use it wisely and efficiently. If AC isn't available, or if you're trying to conserve energy, try to create a specific cool zone within your house. This might be a room with tiled flooring, like a bathroom, or simply the coolest, shadiest room in the house where you can retreat during the hottest hours.
Find the coolest spot and stay there.
Right. Dampen towels and hang them in front of open windows to create a localized evaporative cooling effect, or simply apply cool, damp cloths to your pulse points, wrists, neck, temples. When you absolutely must be outdoors, take precautions as if you were preparing for an expedition. Timing is everything. Strictly avoid direct sun exposure between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Stay inside during peak hours if possible.
If you must be out, seek shade whenever possible. Your clothing choices also make a significant difference. Wear loose-fitting, light-colored clothes made of breathable natural fabrics like cotton or linen.
Loose, light, and natural fabric.
These materials allow air to circulate and reflect the sun's rays, rather than absorbing them. Always utilize broad-brimmed hats to shield your face and neck, and apply sunscreen liberally to protect your skin from harmful UV rays, which are intensified by high heat and can add to your body's heat burden. Consider what you're eating and how you're cooling your body directly. Opt for cooling foods, such as fresh fruit, crisp salads, and yogurt. These foods are often high in water content and can contribute to your overall hydration.
Eat light and hydrating foods.
Exactly. Avoid heavy, protein-rich meals that can increase your metabolic heat production. For immediate relief, taking lukewarm showers or baths can help regulate your body temperature more effectively than cold showers.
Lukewarm, not cold. That's interesting.
Yes, because very cold showers can cause your blood vessels to constrict, actually trapping heat in your core. A lukewarm shower gradually lowers your skin temperature and encourages your body to release heat more effectively. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, community care is absolutely paramount during global heat waves. We must stress the vital role of looking out for others, because heat risk is not evenly distributed.
Check on your neighbors.
Make it a point to check on elderly neighbors, especially those living alone. They are incredibly vulnerable and may not recognize the signs of heat stress or have access to cooling. Pay close attention to young children, who can dehydrate quickly and are less able to communicate their discomfort. If you know people who are outdoor workers, ensure they have adequate breaks in the shade and consistent access to hydration. And please don't forget your pets. Ensure they have plenty of fresh water and shade, and never leave them in parked cars.
Never in parked cars, absolutely.
A few minutes of checking in and offering a glass of water could genuinely save a life in your community.
This is all incredibly practical and vital information that every single one of us can implement immediately. It truly highlights the power of individual agency and community solidarity in the face of these escalating threats. It's inspiring, actually, how much of a difference collective vigilance can make. But this raises an important question. If these are the individual steps we can take, How are our larger healthcare systems stepping up to manage this unprecedented pressure? Because we know from the data you shared earlier that hospitals are seeing significant surges in admissions during these periods. What does that coordinated systemic response look like?
You're absolutely right. The individual actions are crucial, but they're backed up by the incredible, often unseen work of our healthcare systems and dedicated professionals. As we touched upon earlier, hospitals universally see significant surges in heat-related illnesses during these periods. Emergency admissions, specifically for conditions like heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and exacerbated underlying chronic illnesses, can increase by as much as 15%, sometimes even more in urban centers experiencing prolonged extreme heat.
That 15% again, it's a consistent pressure point.
It is. This isn't just a minor uptick. It's a substantial influx that demands rapid, coordinated responses and constrain resources to their breaking point. In the UK, for example, they have a highly organized and integrated system in place, the Heat Health Alert System. This system is collaboratively operated by the UK Health Security Agency, UKHSA, and the Met Office.
The Weather Service and the Health Agency working together.
Exactly. It's responsible for issuing specific alerts, categorized as amber or red, based on forecasted heat levels and their potential health impacts. These alerts aren't just for public information. They trigger very specific pre-planned protocols within the healthcare sector. When an amber alert is issued, it signifies that there is a significant risk to vulnerable populations, prompting actions such as care homes actively checking on residents, hospitals reviewing their bed capacity for heat-related admissions, and public health teams increasing their outreach to at-risk groups.
So amber is be prepared, protect the vulnerable.
That's a good way to put it. A red alert, however, is a national emergency. It indicates a potential threat to everyone, not just the vulnerable, and triggers even more extreme preparedness measures.
Red means everyone is at risk.
Yes. This can involve canceling elective procedures to free up beds and staff, establishing dedicated cooling centers in public buildings, and mobilizing community health workers to conduct door-to-door checks on the most vulnerable. The role of medical professionals, the doctors, nurses, paramedics, and allied health professionals on the front lines, is absolutely critical. They are the ones treating the acute cases of heat stroke and severe dehydration. But their role extends far beyond emergency care.
What else are they doing?
They're adjusting care plans for their existing vulnerable patients, ensuring that those with pre-existing conditions like heart disease, kidney issues, or mental health disorders are adequately protected from heat's effects. Many are also involved in broader community outreach efforts, disseminating vital public health messaging, participating in research on heat impact, and advocating for systemic changes to prevent illnesses before they start.
So they're treating, preventing, and advocating.
It's a multi-pronged effort, and this kind of robust preparedness is not unique to the UK. In India, a country that faces some of the most extreme and prolonged heat globally, authorities have significantly strengthened hospital preparations. Last summer, for instance, India experienced a staggering 40,000 heat stroke cases, with red alerts stretching over 500 heatwave days across different regions.
40,000 cases, 500 red alert days. The scale is immense.
It truly is. In response, many states have implemented heat action plans, or HAPs. These plans involve, for example, mapping vulnerable areas, establishing public cooling centers, ensuring free access to water, providing specific health advisories for different populations, and even adjusting school hours and work timings to avoid peak heat exposure.
Really practical community-level adjustments.
Very much so. This level of sustained extreme heat demands robust, proactive strategies and continuous adaptation. On a global scale, the emphasis is increasingly on a twin approach: extensive preventive public health messaging to educate populations and robust adaptation strategies within healthcare infrastructure to cope with these new realities of a warming world.
It's clear that everyone, from individuals making small daily choices to entire health systems coordinating on a national scale, needs to be prepared and highly responsive. That level of foresight and coordination is impressive, but it brings us to a really practical and urgent point. Despite all these preparations, what if someone is showing those more serious, life-threatening signs of a heat-related illness, the ones we discussed earlier, like heat stroke? If you're with someone or you see someone exhibiting what sounds like heat stroke, what are the immediate life-saving actions you should take right then and there?
This is a vital information that could genuinely save a life, and it's something everyone should commit to memory. When it comes to heat stroke, recognizing the symptoms quickly is the first critical step, because time is absolutely of the essence. As we discussed, these include confusion or an altered mental state. Are they disoriented, irritable, or perhaps losing consciousness.
Confusion is a big red flag.
A huge one. They might have rapid breathing, which could be shallow or gasping, and their skin is often red and crucially dry and hot to the touch because their body's sweating mechanism has failed. If you observe these signs, you must act fast. Do not hesitate.
Yeah.
Your immediate actions should focus intensely on cooling the person down as rapidly as possible, even before emergency services arrive. First, move the person to the coolest spot available immediately.
Get them out of the heat.
Indoors, in an air-conditioned space, if possible, or at the very least, into the deepest shade outdoors, away from direct sunlight. Second, remove any excess clothing they might be wearing, anything that could be trapping heat against their body. Loosen tight collars or belts. Third, and perhaps most effective in the moment, is aggressive cooling of the skin. Apply wet cloths or sponges vigorously to their skin, particularly on areas where major blood vessels are close to the surface, such as the neck, armpits, and groin.
Neck, armpits, groin key cooling spot.
Exactly. If possible, immerse them in a cool, not icy cold bath or shower, or spray them continuously with cool water. If you have a fan, use it to blow air directly over their wet skin. This helps to accelerate the evaporation of the water, which in turn draws heat away from the body.
Fan plus water equals faster cooling.
Yes, evaporative cooling. If the person is conscious and able to swallow safely, offer them small, frequent sips of water, but do not force fluids if they are confused or unconscious, as this poses a choking risk. But here is the most crucial step, the one you should initiate simultaneously with cooling efforts. Call emergency services immediately.
Call for help right away. Don't wait.
Dial your local emergency number, for example, 999 in the UK or 911 in the US. Do not delay. Heatstroke is a medical emergency that requires professional medical intervention, often involving intravenous fluids and advanced cooling techniques that only paramedics or hospital staff can provide. While you're waiting for help to arrive, continue diligently with the cooling efforts. The urgency cannot be overstated. With heatstroke, every minute counts towards preventing severe organ damage, including brain damage, and ultimately saving a life. Rapid cooling and professional medical attention are paramount.
That is vital information that could literally save a life. And it's important that everyone listening understands those steps and acts quickly. It makes all the difference. Now, before we look ahead to the even broader long-term solutions, let's quickly debunk some common misconceptions we often hear about heat. What are some of those popular ideas that actually might be misleading or worse, dangerous during a heat wave?
It's absolutely essential to separate fact from fiction when dealing with extreme heat, because misconceptions can be incredibly dangerous and lead to complacency. One very common myth is that fans alone are sufficient to keep you cool during a heat wave.
Ah, yes, the fan myth.
The reality, however, is that while fans can provide a feeling of comfort by circulating air and evaporating sweat, they are simply not effective enough to prevent heat-related illness when ambient temperatures rise above approximately 35 degrees Celsius, around 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
So above 35 Cs, fans don't really cool you.
At that point, fans are essentially just circulating hot air, rather than effectively cooling your body or the environment sufficiently. They merely move the hot air around and can even contribute to dehydration by accelerating sweat evaporation without providing a true cooling effect. You need more substantial cooling methods like air conditioning, moving to a cooler shaded space, or applying cool compresses to your body. Fans are helpful below 35 degrees C or when used in conjunction with water to enhance evaporative cooling.
Okay, so useful up to a point, but not a magic bullet.
Precisely. Another pervasive myth, and a very dangerous one, is that only the elderly are at significant risk during heat waves.
We touched on their vulnerability, but they're not the only ones.
Exactly. While it's absolutely true that the elderly are a particularly vulnerable population, their bodies may have a harder time regulating temperature, they may have underlying health conditions, and they might be on medications that impair their ability to sweat or retain fluids. Extreme heat actually poses risks to a much wider range of individuals across the globe. This includes outdoor workers, such as construction workers or agricultural laborers, who are often exposed to direct sun and strenuous activity for prolonged periods, leading to rapid dehydration and overheating.
People working outside, yeah.
Young children are also incredibly vulnerable because their bodies regulate heat less efficiently than adults. They have a larger surface area to body mass ratio, meaning they absorb heat more quickly, and their sweating mechanisms aren't fully developed. Pregnant women are at increased risk due to physiological changes like increased blood volume and metabolic rate, which raise their core body temperature.
Okay, so kids, pregnant women too.
And even highly conditioned athletes can be susceptible to heat-related illnesses if they push themselves too hard in extreme conditions without proper hydration and acclimatization. So it's critical to understand that heat affects a broad spectrum of the population, and vigilance, as well as adherence to safety guidelines, is needed for everyone, not just one demographic. Complacency based on these myths can lead to tragic outcomes.
It's so important to have the right information, isn't it? Knowing these facts truly helps us protect ourselves and our communities more effectively. It shifts our perspective from a general sense of it's hot to a targeted understanding of real risks and effective strategies, ensuring we're not operating under dangerous assumptions. But beyond these immediate individual actions and system responses, which are clearly crucial for short-term safety, what about the bigger picture? What are the long-term solutions, the systemic changes we need to implement for a warming world that's only going to see more of these extreme events in the years and decades to come?
That's the crucial long-term vision we must embrace if we are to build truly resilient societies. While immediate responses are vital, truly building resilience requires systemic, structural changes that fundamentally reshape our environments. A key area for this is urban planning initiatives. Cities in particular tend to be heat islands, meaning they trap and amplify heat due to vast expanses of concrete and asphalt, sparse vegetation, and dense buildings that absorb and re-emit solar radiation.
The urban heat island effect again?
Exactly. To combat this, one of the most effective strategies is planting significantly more trees within urban environments. Trees provide natural shade, which can significantly lower ground temperatures by up to 20 degrees C and air temperatures by several degrees through a process called evapotranspiration.
Like the trees are sweating.
Think of it like that, yes. It cools the air around them. We also need to add more shaded areas in public spaces like bus stops, playgrounds, parks, and walkways, using canopies, pergolas, or even artificial shade structures to protect people from direct sun exposure while they move around. Installing reflective rooftops on buildings is another smart, passive cooling measure. These roofs are designed to bounce sunlight away rather than absorbing it, reducing heat absorption and keeping buildings cooler from the top down, which also lessens the need for energy-intensive air conditioning.
Cool roofs, more trees, more shade. Sounds like common sense almost.
It is, but requires deliberate planning and investment. And critically, establishing easily accessible public cooling centers which are publicly available. Air-conditioned refuges offers a lifeline for those without adequate cooling at home during extreme heat events. These are not just temporary shelters, but vital community infrastructure. We're already seeing global examples of how these initiatives are being implemented and refined. Cities like Paris, Delhi, and Melbourne are leading the way with innovative long-term heat action plans.
What are they doing specifically?
Paris, for instance, has invested heavily in urban greening programs, systematically turning concrete squares into green spaces, creating cool islands, E02 for sure, with fountains and trees across the city, and even opening municipal pools for longer hours during heat waves. Delhi, tragically no stranger to extreme heat, has been implementing comprehensive heat action plans that include early warning systems, extensive public awareness campaigns translated into multiple local languages, mapping vulnerable populations, and ensuring access to drinking water points and cooling centers.
Tailored approaches for their specific context.
Very much so. Melbourne has similar ambitious programs focused on increasing green infrastructure, promoting water-sensitive urban design, and creating more public cooling spaces to mitigate the urban heat island effect. These cities demonstrate that it is possible to adapt and mitigate heat's impact through strategic, long-term planning. But these efforts require more than just local initiatives. The role of governments in significant, sustained investment cannot be overstated. Governments must invest substantially in climate-resilient infrastructure.
Bigger picture investment.
Yes. This means upgrading existing power grids to withstand higher temperatures and surging demand, potentially burying lines or using more heat-resistant materials, and building smart grids that can manage energy more efficiently. It also means improving water management systems to cope with shortages and extreme rainfall, and retrofitting buildings, especially public housing, to be more energy efficient and heat-resistant through better insulation and passive cooling designs. These are long-term, expensive projects, but they are absolutely necessary for future-proofing our societies and safeguarding public health.
But all this adaptation, it doesn't solve the root cause, does it?
No, it doesn't. And underlying all of this, the most urgent long-term solution remains the necessity to slash greenhouse gas emissions on a global scale. All these adaptation measures, while vital, are ultimately coping mechanisms. The scientific community continues to issue stark warnings. If current global warming trends continue without aggressive action, the UK, a country not traditionally known for extreme heat, could experience 40 degrees Celsius summers within just 12 years.
12 years, 40 degrees in the UK, that's a wake-up call.
Imagine the systemic shock to a society largely unequipped for such conditions. This isn't a distant hypothetical. It's a very near-term reality that demands immediate and dramatic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions worldwide across all sectors: energy, transportation, industry, agriculture. Without addressing the root cause, adaptation alone will become an increasingly insurmountable challenge, and we risk overwhelming our ability to cope.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's crystal clear that individual actions, while crucial for immediate safety, must be combined with large-scale systemic changes driven by governments and forward-thinking urban planning to truly build resilience in a warming world. It's a multifaceted challenge, but one we must face head-on with urgency and foresight for the health and safety of generations to come. This podcast is brought to you by Dr. Rajdeep Bahadur Khatri. If you found this video helpful, then don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe for more content like this. Stay informed and stay healthy.